Do you have that one photo of yourself that you just can't forget? Well, for me, that was this photo, right here. And no, it's not the iPhone 6 quality, nor is it the fact that it's further enhanced by the blurry mirror. But rather, it's the fact that I couldn't look at this photo for the longest time. When I saw this photo, all I could think of were the bulges in between my legs, the fact that my waist looked big because of that bulky bomber jacket, and thank God my face was not showing because I probably would have come up with about 10 more things that I didn't like. To me, this represented how I saw myself differently from how you see me. I live with body dysmorphic disorder, also commonly known as BDD. It's characterized by the perception of flaws that are either so small in proportion to the reaction they produce, or they just don't even exist to begin with. And while my story of having BDD and becoming an activist, getting involved in clinical neuroscience research, becoming a fashion model seems pretty unique nonetheless, my story is not. As a matter of fact, about 2.5% of the world's population lives with BDD. And that's likely an underestimate. Millions of people as we speak have this condition. Millions more have eating disorders. Millions more have body image disturbances, and so many millions more simply live with a negative body image. My journey started when I was about 13 years old. Honestly, I never really thought much about my body beforehand, but I was a ballet dancer, and in this industry, we talk a lot about how you look. I was told by my ballet teacher that I was too fat to ever be taken seriously as a ballet dancer. People would make fun of me. Judges, they could never take someone like me seriously. And people at school must be making fun of me at the thought that I was a ballet dancer. Nobody could ever love someone who looked like me. And yet, I was also told that I was too big everywhere except for my waist. But very ironically, I was so concerned about how my waist looked. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Before this, I never thought of how I looked really all that much. But to me, this marked the start of how I began my journey with BDD. Now, no matter what your favorite TikTok influencer or YouTube commentator might say, body image ideals are not a brand new construct. As a matter of fact, they're older than both you and I. That's right, we're talking about the good old Venus figurines here. Neanderthals used to carve these things out, as a matter of fact. They're about 35 to 40,000 years old. That dates back to like the beginning of humans almost. And I know what you're saying, oh, Victoria, she doesn't look like an Instagram baddie. And that's entirely true. But body image ideals have changed throughout history and time. Even in the short term, look at Kim Kardashian compared to Paris Hilton. And they changed throughout culture as well. Go overseas to the Gambia in West Africa, where full figures are considered the ideal body shape. But go just a little bit north of there, into Turkey and Morocco, and suddenly, thin ideals are the best, even more so than in America. Travel a little further overseas and you'll see Japan. And in Japan, they also have a very thin ideal too. However, body dissatisfaction rates, they are very high, higher than that in America. But if you look at the rates of eating disorders, they're significantly lower, to a degree where we can't say that's by chance. The reality is that we don't know why this happens, and who knows if we'll ever get a full answer. But we can say for sure that there are different processes going on. We don't know the neurobiological effects. We don't know why these people see themselves differently, or how we might have inaccuracies in our diagnostic criteria. But we do know that it is our best option to examine why these are happening. Realize the nuances, discover them, so we can finally get a fuller image as to why these disorders occur in the first place for every population. And I don't know about you, but I think I would rather change the environmental cause than go in with CRISPR-Cas9 and start cutting up my DNA. So, for me, my journey started with the whole environmental change aspect. Like anyone else passionate about a movement, I joined the body positive movement. Possibly the one movement that's so connected to science that we think it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. When I was 15 years old, I went to the world's largest scholarship ballet competition, Youth America Grand Prix. I was the only Canadian to go there as an independent soloist with my own choreography. I did my routine to show the world that, hey, even though I did not fit the norms, the body ideals at 5'8" and 132 pounds, I still deserved to be on that stage. And I saw my ballet teacher there in the audience that night. And I represented who I was, and I represented all the women who lived my journey through ballet. But this mission followed me all the way into academia, when I wanted to learn more than just body positivity, but about the disturbances that are occurring. When I got there, I joined a clinical neuroscience laboratory at CAMH called the Brain, Body, and Perception Lab, where we study body image disturbances, of course. I joined many organizations such as the International OCD Foundation, the BDD Foundation, and even the American Psychological Association. And through my work, I realized there was a disconnect between what my younger self was so passionate about and the research. It's almost like this broken bridge right here. You see, we look at science as though it's the study of eating and anxiety, and then we see the body positive movement as basically just a moral philosophy for loving oneself. But in reality, these two fields are actually quite similar. We could take the body positive movement and use it as a preventative measure for these psychiatric disorders. However, we have not made scientific communication accessible enough for these activists to use, to understand, and to really grasp as well. So as a result, these two fields have thrived on their very own, and the bridge has gotten deeper and deeper with its gap. And if we look over to applied psychology, we see many, many different fields. Yes, I know we're talking economic psychology, political psychology, community psychology, traffic psychology. We even have an ergonomic psychology, believe it or not. And then we have military psychology. The pure basis of military psychology's very existence is to connect the needs of its users, military personnel, with clinicians and researchers who are studying those populations. Of course, people in the military, they experience higher rates of PTSD, and the disorders they experience are very particular to them. So the creation of this very field was to bridge the gap between the research, between the clinicians, and connect it to the military to help these populations. And I know what you're going to say next. Yes, of course, I've been talking about body image this whole time, so there must be something out there for body image, isn't there? Well, there's not. Body image psychology could be a field that would be so influential, yet it doesn't exist. By merely defining this field, not only can we start talking about the nuances that occur in body image, but we can have a platform to actually discuss why this gap occurs, why we can't make scientific literature more accessible, and how we can make it more accessible for people of non-scientific backgrounds to understand. How we can uplift a movement to become more of a science. Of course, BDD doesn't sound great, and body image negatively doesn't sound all that amazing either. But there's a lot more than what meets the eye with body image. Visual processing is significantly altered, particularly in secondary visual regions. So, say for example, you look at this photo of me here, yeah, looks familiar. And you're probably going to look at my face, because psychologically, that's what we do. We are very attracted to look at people's faces. And then you might look at how I'm standing. Yes, the wind was like 40 miles per hour during this interview. But someone with BDD wouldn't quite see this picture exactly the same. They focus in on the details. Maybe the little bump on the nose. Or maybe it's the fact that there's a little nudge on my jawline right there. People with BDD don't see the world quite like we do. There are many differences. And in a study conducted by Dr. Jamie Fuser, someone I had the honor of working with at CAMH, it was found that this not only happens in their own face, it happens with the faces of others, and it even happens when processing photos of houses. And if we look to more of the neurobiology, we see the emotional processing that's altered. In another study by Fuser, it was found that symptom severity is highly correlated to decreased volumes in the right amygdala and the left inferior frontal gyrus. And if that all sounds great to you, you'll be right, actually, kind of is Greek and has a little Latin origin too. But what that means is that people with BDD not only see themselves differently, but they experience different emotions, heightened responses. They feel saddened by the way they look. They feel disgusting. These strong, strong emotions that you may not feel if you saw a flaw in yourself. Body image disturbances as a whole beyond BDD were first described by a female psychiatrist in 1962, Heidelbruch. And she said about anorexia nervosa, an eating disorder that's characterized by the perception of being much bigger than what you are and the starvation as a result of that, that anorexia is not pathological merely because of the malnutrition. There are other disorders that have worse malnutrition. Rather, it is pathological because the people with anorexia see themselves as significantly bigger than what they are. They feel gruesome. They feel disgusting about how they look. They feel like they're ugly when they're not. This, at its root, is what we call a body image disturbance today. And of course, how could anybody think they were ugly if there was no definition of ugly? People with BDD are not distressed about brick walls on houses, even if they see them differently. Every body image disturbance at its core is connected back to a body ideal of some kind. And while these ideals might change over time, these disturbances continue to grow. And it's body positivity's ultimate goal and job to change these ideals, to open it up, to become more inclusive. And yet, despite that fact, we still have not connected it to the very populations that they could be helping the most. We have two separate fields of body positivity as a social movement, as well as the science of body image. And we act as though they're never intertwined, when in reality, body positivity could be the very best preventative measure for these psychiatric disorders. And body positivity, by connecting itself back to these psychiatric disorders as a preventative measure, could become a scientific basis. It could have a scientific rooting within itself that it's been criticized for so long. And by doing this, by connecting these two fields together, we could help some of the most vulnerable populations in the world. Populations who were just like me when I took this photo. So why don't we uplift a science with a movement? And why don't we validate a movement with a science? And why don't we call it body image psychology? Thank you.